Okay, welcome back. This is part 2 of my more intricate, very fun, dramatic clusters that we're making. We made our own backgrounds, and now we're going to proceed to, breaking them up, tearing them up, and into smaller parts for the clusters. And I showed you how to make some, and then these I did not think of doing until after I had stopped taping. And these these are just some strips of paper that had some highly textured design on the back of, and so I pulled those out because I realized I didn't have any real neutrals, and I have to bulk up my supply of clusters in the neutral area because I pretty well used them up almost in one swoop. So now these, you probably noticed these are much different from the ones that I taught in part 1. And all I did, instead of using the little round daubers, I just used the ink pad itself and just swooped it up and got this grainier, highly textured feeling. And then you'll notice that there's some marks, and that's just me turning the little pad on its side and just kind of making streaks and anything to provide some little extra interest. Now these I have not stamped in any way like I did the others, and I really want to do that. So since I've already shown you that, I'm not going to take up your time to watch me do that in part 2. If you want to see how I got these very dramatic looks, then be sure and watch part 1 and then come back, or whatever you want. Now I have gone and pulled out, like these were some of the strips that we did in part 1. And so I've picked out some fabrics that I feel will, blend and look great with the colors that I have in those strips. And so I've pre-picked fabrics to choose from, and that's a good idea to plan ahead because there's a zillion different directions you can go in, and so it's kind of nice to have some pre-planning done. And then we had this cool version, and so I have picked other fabrics that I'll be using when I make these swatches from these strips. So I'll be back in a minute after I just finish up some of these neutrals with some of the dramatic designs that I want to have as part of this whole concept. So I'll be right back when I've done that. Okay, I'm back, and I have taken and made some really neutral colors and then decorated them up with a combination of stamps and stencils. And you can see that these on this side are very, very busy, and then these over here are less busy. I have no idea at this point which type I will favor. I'll find that out as we get to making the clusters themselves. And you see I have pulled out a bunch of fabrics that will, look good with those neutral colors. So I guess we're kind of ready. If I'm to, do something with all of this, I'm only going to have time to just get the basic backgrounds done, and then we'll come back in a third video and put our bling and focal points on. So, okay, let's proceed. Here are just a few of the threads that I pulled off of some of the fabrics that I tore apart earlier today. And I always save my threads because you never know when they'll come in handy to use in something. And you see I have a bunch here I have a bunch more over here. Just, you know, every possible color. What else do we have in here? There's some black cardstock, small pieces. I have to remember those are there. Got more threads here and more threads there. So I am loaded with threads of all different colors, and I guess maybe I'll put these away for right now and just remember that I have those. Okay. Well, I'm really loving these neutral colors, so I think maybe I'll start there and then we can move on from there. And here's this really nice wide piece. I discovered as I was using up some of the clusters that I made before that everything was very vertical, and so I need to do more horizontal, and so I'm going to take care of that problem today, and I'm just going to start doing some casual ripping. I do like my edges to be torn, not cut edges, so I'll have to take the time to do a little ripping. Okay, but that would make a nice, you know, horizontal to build on. Here we have another. Maybe I'll turn this entire strip into nothing but horizontals because I have plenty of narrow strips that I can do for vertical designs. And you know, you never know until you decide you need to use something, which, you know, format you're going to need. Even with as wide as that strip was, by the time I rip it down, it's not very wide at all. So I'll have to try and get a little more width out of them with the fabrics. Maybe I'll leave those alone for now. So, but I'm not going to throw these away because you never know when you might just need a little strip of something. And so don't throw anything away until you're all done and you know for sure you're not going to need what you're throwing away. So now we've got some verticals. I'm just going to, you know, start ripping these into various lengths. So that's a sparser one. Okay, I think that'll be enough, more than enough for this video. And let's see what combinations we can put together with our fabrics. And I try to use varying sizes. And so okay, we're just dealing with the basic background, knowing that we will be adding other things on top to make our full cluster collage, or I should say collage cluster. I didn't need to put glue over the whole fabric. Wasn't thinking. Okay. Now, just going to work with trying to pull together as much variety as I can for the video. And when you do these for yourself, you'll probably want to make, you know, maybe 2 or 3 or more that are very similar, so you have some companions to create unity in a journal or on a pocket or whatever you're using them for. I tear the fabric shorter than the paper or longer than the paper, but not the same length. So now we've got a little strip of this triangle design. And you do have to decide which element is going to go on top. Right now, basically, I'm putting all of my my fabrics on top of the paper, but you may want to change that up and do some paper on top of the fabric. So it's totally your choice. Let's look at a little extra long one here. Do I want to emphasize the length by going with a striped? I don't think so, but I think that would be good to use on. Okay, in this particular case, I'm going to change it up. I'm going to make my fabric a little longer than my paper. And I'm going to glue the paper on top of the fabric. I know there's many ways to make clusters, and I'm certainly not the first one to do this, but I have resisted watching other people make theirs because I don't want to be influenced by what someone else is doing. I want to come up with my own brand of clusters, and I think I have. Don't know for sure because I don't see what other people are doing. Okay, there's several verticals, so I'm going to set the rest of these aside, and let's do a couple horizontal. And I did stamp these with some days of the week stamps, and so they're going in the right direction. So how about maybe something like that that has some letters in it? And we will go wider than the paper. And we'll glue the paper on top of the fabric. This is a great way to use up some fabrics or papers that you're not really in love with, and that if you don't see yourself using it in a journal as a page or on a cover or something like that, then pull out those and use them up in your clusters, because more than likely than not, you're going to wind up, if you're collaging, you're going to wind up covering over some of, and I have found that I may not like a certain fabric or piece of paper on its own, but when I mix it with something else, it turns out to be really charming and one of my favorites. So, you have to learn not to judge things too. Okay, I think love that fraying. Maybe I can get more of it down here, pulling off some of these threads, because I want to use this right side up, not upside down, just for design purposes. So if I can get it looking better down here. Then I'll have some of that raggedy edge of the fabric show by gluing it on top of the paper. Okay, so here we have a bunch of backgrounds done in the neutral, and you see I've used additional patterns, trying to vary them not only in size but type. And so I have the color palette is the same going throughout. Some I have darker, bolder on, and some lesser, and that's great because you want that variety. So we'll put those aside for now, and we'll come back to them probably in the next video and take them all the way to the end. So now let's pull out some of these colored. Okay, these are the more neutrals. We'll set these aside, and let's take a look at these that I made in part 1. And these are some of the, now these are sort of, a warmer, got some yellows and pinks and light reds in here, a little bit of rust. So here's some fabrics that can be considered. Has some of that same, I don't like that with them. Here's something with some bling on it. Oh, this is probably a piece of sari silk that has some bling on it. Maybe I can pull it apart here. It's kind of glued at the bottom. Yeah, so this will work. And I have this. Then I have these smaller bits. These are from quilting squares. And decide what colors I like. Maybe not that one. Don't care for that. I like those circles. I like that for color. I don't like this for color. Okay, so I've got quite a few things we can... Oh, since I've got some of these with the words postcard going this way, I can turn those sections into horizontals. Where do we want to tear? That'll give me a couple of extra wide. And I could do all three of those, and then we got to get some verticals. Well, let's kind of figure, oh, I have over here some dyed fabrics. This is dyed pickled beets. I used pickled beet juice to get this pinkish color. I have a video on that, I believe. If you look in my playlist, you might find it. Okay. I have a piece of pinkish cheesecloth that I dyed. Maybe we can use some of that. So in this particular case, I'm kind of deciding to go maybe a little with more of a plain background, and maybe we'll put a little cheesecloth on top. You know, if you get your supplies out that are going to coordinate color-wise, just go ahead and get them out and set them by so that they're there for you to choose from. You know, and then let the creative ideas flow from that. So, yeah, adding some cheesecloth adds some really nice texture. And then I'm going to just add the end, you know, the bottom of this here, like so. And don't forget that this is just background. We're laying in our background. So in this, I'm going to change it up a little bit. I'm going to glue the paper. I forgot to rip off. So that's going to go over the fabric. And then I'm going to put a thin piece of cheesecloth on top this time. Someone once asked me whether the pickled beet juice had an odor to it. It might initially, but once it's dried and laid around a while, it all goes away, so not to worry about it. And let's change it up again. I got some Tim Holtz fabric over here that had a little bit of a pink tinge to it, but I guess it doesn't when you get it right up next to actual pink, then it ceases to look pink. Not that I have to do pink. Here's some coffee dyed cheesecloth. I don't think I want to use these in long areas. I think that's going to be a bit much. So I'll save that for shorter vertical versions. Alright, so now I have 3 nice horizontal formats. And let's see what we can do vertically. Where have I got more red? Do I need to add more red? You can see where I used different types of stencils to get the black designs. And I like doing it in a random manner. So, okay. Let's say I tear off a piece of this. I don't want my fabric to be this wide. So I'm going to rip that down. I'm going to wind up with quite a mixture here, and that'll be fun, but it'll also be very challenging when it comes to putting some focal points on this to pull it all together and make it work. I'm going to use a different fabric. Again, my fabric is wider than I want it. See how you can wind up with lots of little threads. So notice that some cases the fabric is shorter than the paper, and in other cases it's longer. And that's just for variety, no other reason. In this case, I'm going to offset my fabric. The fabric is longer than the paper, but I'm not going to glue them together that way. I'm going to offset, so I have more hanging off up here and none down here. And that gives me some variety there. So I think that's where we'll stop with this particular color palette, and we'll get to the cool ones now. I'm going to move this stuff out of the way. Okay, so goodness, what did I do? Oh, okay, so here are the neutral ones that I did first. I'll put them out of the way, and then these are the warm color, reddish, pinkish, yellowish ones. And now we'll go into this color palette, see what we've got. A lot of nice variety as far as the geographic design is concerned. We could use, get some of these threads out of the way. Okay, so we went a little triadic color scheme here. We're more complementary, analogous color scheme with these two, and triadic with that. And so with these, I can use some of this sari silk. It blends with that. And these have some purple tones in them. So let's see what we got here fabric-wise that might work. It's kind of nice. And that's nice for the triadic. Maybe use a little of that. This is a yellow-green, and that would be all wrong for that. Not good here. Might have worked with the pink ones we did earlier. Possible. A little too bright. Okay. All right. Again, these fabric, they were cut originally, cut off the piece they came from for a different purpose, and they're just too wide for clusters, in my opinion. So we'll tear them down. Might as well do it all at once. What do I like the best? No reason why we can't have more than one fabric on either. So I think we're gonna tear off down here. And I'm gonna come over. What if we change it up and do two fabrics? That'd be rather wild, wouldn't it? Okay. I think we're going to cut here. That's really pretty. I like that. Very pretty. This time I'm going to come over with the greenish blue fabric. And maybe we'll put a different one on the other side. Change it up from that to this. I'm liking these a lot, and so I think I can even use some of these that I discarded, as long as I trim them down. Now you can also take your sewing machine, or even do it by hand if you want, and you can come back later over these before you finish them off or afterwards, and sew down them to make sure they stay in place. Okay, so what if we change it up a little more, cover over some of the more boring sections. Now we've got 3 fabrics in our paper in this extra long cluster, and I'm real happy with how these are coming along. Very exciting. And I do want to, before I run out of time, I want to get a couple of these triadic color scheme made. Okay, so let me get a little nicer background here. And so we have our cool side over here, and our warm side over here. And in the middle, we'll drop in our neutrals. Here's a couple of horizontals and some verticals. Okay, so that's going to be it for part 2, and so be sure and come back and watch for part 3, where I'm going to put all the focal points on and finish them off, and you'll see how they come together in the end. And I'm really excited. I like very much how this has come. Love all the patterns and the colors and the variety. Just a lot of fun. And of course I have a ton of strips left over, so I can make a whole bunch more whenever I get ready to. Well, that's it for this one. If you enjoyed this content and you've stayed with me, I appreciate it so much, and would love to have you comment and give me your questions and suggestions of whatever you want to say is fine. And so, that said, I'll see you in part 3, hopefully. This is Miss Darling calling this a wrap. Bye-bye.